What is happening on my phone? A million things just showed up on my phone. Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill. I'm bringing you a fairy tale today. It's Jack the Giant Killer. It's a little on the nose. I just did a video on giants, but I looked it up while I was in my musings about giants, and it's a fun story. I thought I'd share it with you. Jack was a good lad. He was a farmer's son living in the era of King Arthur when he was king and Guinevere was still queen, so it's like in that honeymoon phase where things are going all right for King Arthur. Anyway, Jack lived in Cornwall, but it wasn't until one day when he was a young man, he went to the market and everyone was freaking out. They had no idea what to do because they had a giant problem. The giant's name was Cormoran, and he lived out on like a mountainy, rocky little thing just out at sea. But he would wade in whenever the fancy took him. He would take sheep and livestock and he'd eat them whole, and he wouldn't even think about taking a bunch of villagers and broiling them up for his breakfast. He was a very scary giant. So while everyone was scared, Jack started asking about this Cormoran the giant. Where does he live? He lives over on the thing. He lives in a big old cave. Exactly how big is he? He is 18 feet tall. 18 feet, that's pretty big. Okay, said Jack. What would one get if one was to say, "Murder said giant"? And all the town elders and the magistrates kind of looked at each other and they went, I guess they'd get the giant's treasure. He's got a bunch of treasure, a bunch of stuff he stole from everyone, keeps it in the cave, they could keep that for themselves. All right, said Jack, I'm gonna go kill that giant. And all I need is a pickaxe, a bugle, and an ordinary household shovel. So in the dead of night, Jack rows out to this mountain place, this rock, I don't have a good understanding of what the geography of Cornwall is like. Gets out over the water, there's a rocky place, there's a cave there, and in the dead of night, Jack digs a hole. It is 22 feet deep, and it is 22 feet across. And then he goes out and he collects a bunch of sticks, which are clearly at least 23 feet long, and he covers it up. He covers it up with all these sticks, strews straw all across it, and then throws some like clods of moss over the top so that it looks just like the ground, just like dirt. I know that I often think that the dirt looks like a bunch of sticks and straw and moss. By the time he's done, it's just about dawn, so he stands on the opposite side of this hole that he's dug to where the cave entrance is. And he starts playing his bugle like at the start of a fox hunt, which specifically, the onomatopoeia is written, "Tantivy, tantivy, tantivy." I always thought that's what bugles sounded like as well. The giant wakes up and he's like, who the hell is on my island, mountain, rock in the sea of Cornwall? And he comes charging out, sees this dude, this like, what, 18-year-old standing there playing the bugle, waking him up, looking cocksure as anything. And Cormoran charges out and immediately, whoosh, ow, I hit myself in the chin. He tumbles into the pit, breaking all them spiky sticks on the way. The giant's landing in the pit caused such a quake that the mountain shook, but Jack just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. He was laughing for so long, taunting this giant, till eventually he said, "Oh, you're gonna eat me? You want me for breakfast? You know what's a better breakfast for you, Cormoran the giant? How about a pickaxe sandwich?" And he like dives into the pit with the pickaxe and lands straight on his head with the pointy bit of the pickaxe. He kills him with the pickaxe is what I'm saying. And then he calmly fills in the pit with a bunch of dirt and takes all the giant's treasure for himself and goes back to town. And everyone is so pleased with him that they give him the title Jack the Giant Killer and a very fancy belt with gold embroidery that says, "Here is the valiant Cornishman who killed the giant Cormoran." And they give him a sword too. What the heck? Not like he needs one, but good. Now 4 months later, Jack's gotten restless. He's decided he's gonna go and explore the world. He's gonna venture into Wales. So on one particular day, he finds himself tromping through a forest. He stops to take a drink of water from a spring well that he finds and has a nice little nap there. But oh boy, this forest belonged to Blunderbore, another giant who had heard about what happened to Cormoran. So when Blunderbore comes to the well for his own water, he finds Jack asleep, sees this inscription on Jack's belt and goes, "Oh, cool, you killed my kinsman? Neat." And what a stroke of luck to find Jack here asleep. He's got him in his clutches. But instead of just smooshing him dead on the spot, he throws Jack over his shoulder and takes him back to his enchanted castle so that he can, I don't know, go and get his cousin and they can eat him together or whatever. They go into this massive castle courtyard, right? Under the gate, and the courtyard is full of human bones. Jack has woken up and he is freaking the hell out. There's this chamber just above the gateway, and Blunderbore sticks Jack in there, locks him all up, and then goes off to get his cousin or brother or whoever, the other guy. Jack doesn't know what to do. He is proper in trouble. But he does have, in this one gigantic room, a window that looks out over the road. And so when the giants start coming back towards him, running along the road, he can see them coming. And as luck would have it, there was just a bunch of rope in the corner of this room. So what Jack does is he makes a couple of nooses. And as the giants are unlocking the big iron gate that is right underneath where he is, he dangles down these nooses, gets them over the giants' heads, and ties the opposite end to a big strong beam. So when the giants go to move into the courtyard, the nooses tighten and they start to strangle and they start to strangle. And then Jack takes his opportunity to swing down on the ropes with his sword and he slays both the giants dead. Now Jack is a thorough lad. He takes the keys off Blunderbore and he wanders around the castle unlocking every door that he finds. He finds 3 princesses who are like pinned by their hair and nearly starved to death. Very disturbing. This is not Criminal Minds. So they're just stuck in this room their hair is like, and they haven't eaten and they're mostly dead. But he finds them and he frees them and he gives them the keys to the castle, and I guess they own the enchanted castle now. So that's nice. So anyway, Jack goes on his way. He's going as fast as he can. Too fast even, because he gets lost as he's traveling. Until finally it's nighttime, he doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know where he should be going, and he winds up in this valley and he finds this strange, dilapidated old house. But at this point, he's desperate. He knocks on the door. Who should answer? It's another giant. This one is Welsh. It has 2 heads. It doesn't have a name. They just call it Mr. Giant. We're getting a little less detailed as we go on. This giant, ooh, it's a cunning one, because its MO is that it pretends to be your friend. Puts on a whole facade of hospitality, offers you food, offers you a place to rest, and then he gets ya. Jack just thought he was having a nice time hanging out with this Welsh giant with 2 heads. Mr. Giant showed him to his room, wished him a good rest, and then let him be. But Jack was too tired to sleep. You know how it gets. And so he happened to be awake when he heard the giant coming up the stairs and muttering to himself. Now, I gotta say, the book specifically says that the giant speaks in a strong Welsh accent. This whole section gives an interesting impression of the author's thoughts on the Welsh, so I apologize for the coming accent, but I gotta do it. The giant says, "Though here ye lodge with me this night, you shall not see the morning light. My club shall dash your brains outright." I'm so sorry. Jack gets a little prejudiced at this point. He says, so that's your Welsh trick, is it? Alright, calm down, Jack. So Jack hops out of bed, he gets some of the wood from next to the fire, and he puts it all under the blanket so it looks like he's still there. He just takes 1 blanket for himself, goes and huddles in the corner, and pretends to snore, and just waits. Eventually, Mr. Giant comes in on tiptoe, pulls out a club, and just goes whack, 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 until Mr. Giant is pretty convinced that he's broken every bone in Jack's body and giggles to himself and leaves. Jack hops back into bed and has a great night's sleep. The next morning, when he wakes up and comes downstairs, Mr. Giant freaks the hell out. So freaked out that Mr. Giant inexplicably says, "Odds splutter her nails. Did she sleep well? Was there nothing felt in the night?" Look, I would keep doing my terrible Welsh accent, but I'm not even sure how to say "odds splutter her nails" in my accent. And Jack wants to make the most of this situation, so Jack just says, "Oh yeah, I had a great sleep. I think like a rat or something came in and was hitting me with its tail at one point, but no, I had a good night's rest." The giant is like, damn, this kid is strong. He is jacked because he felt nothing. And so Mr. Giant, not quite knowing what to do, swaps food portions with Jack for the morning, where he was gonna give Jack just a normal human-sized bowl, and he was gonna eat a big old giant bowl of, I don't know, porridge or whatever. He gives the giant bowl to Jack, and he keeps the little bowl to himself, just out of sheer terror. Jack's looking at this bowl, he's like, I can't keep up this lie, I can't eat this much porridge. But what he has is, under his traveling cloak, he has a leather bag. And so he just kind of surreptitiously swivels that leather bag round to the front, and as he's eating, he drops most of the porridge into the opening of his leather bag and only eats a little bit of it himself. Then at the end of the meal, the giant's barely eaten anything. Jack looks at him and he says, "Hey, you want to see a trick?" Pulls out his knife and stabs into the bag. It looks like he's stabbing into his own stomach and cuts upward, letting all of the porridge that he put in the bag spill out onto the floor. And he's like, "Aha, see, how cool's that?" Mr. Giant doesn't want to be outdone. Pulls out his own knife and goes, "Odd splutter her nails." Again, her can do that herself. Spelt H-U-R. And then stabs himself in the belly and cuts upward and dies from, the stab wound and all the gizzards that are falling out of its stomach. So that didn't go well for Mr. Giant. Now, meanwhile, elsewhere, King Arthur has a son, a very valiant prince, who has heard a story about a lady who is very beautiful but has been possessed by 7 demons. He wants to go and rescue the lady, but it's across the other end of the country. He's gonna need a bunch of money in order to get there. He keeps begging and begging and begging King Arthur, "Please, Dad, please give me the money I need to go and save the beautiful lady." And Arthur keeps saying no, but eventually he just gets worn down. Valiant Prince is very annoying. So he goes, fine, here, take a bunch of gold and silver with you. And so the Valiant Prince goes off in the direction of Wales, riding one horse and bringing another horse with him, laden with all these lovely pieces of gold and silver. He reaches this market town in Wales, and there's a funeral procession for the corpse of a very generous, kind man that everyone loved. But the corpse had been arrested on its way to the graveyard because the man had owed lots of money to various people while he was still alive. And so because he hadn't paid those debts, according to the law, he must be arrested. Alright, sure, whatever. The prince finds out about this and he thinks that's an unjust law. Tell all of the people who he owed money that they can come to me and I'll pay his debts. This is not a good plan. Whether the dead man actually owed this money to people started coming. Everyone's coming in to his hotel room and saying, "Hey, Princey, the guy owed me, 50 gold crowns. He owed me 1,000, until the prince only has 2 pence left. Things are looking rough. Thankfully for the valiant prince, Jack showed up in town at just the right time. Jack heard about how generous the prince was, and he thought, what a cool dude. I wanna be his servant for a little while. I'm gonna look after him. And so Jack, with the last of his own money, settles the debt at the inn, and he and the prince head off together to go and rescue this lady. Jack loves adventure, but as they're leaving town, this old woman rushes out and she says, "Justice! Justice, justice for me! That old man owed me as well. He owed me 2 pence, and you should pay me just as well as the others." So the prince begrudgingly reaches into his pocket and gives over the last 2 pence that he owed. Now, without money, journeying off into the wilds of Wales, the prince is worried. How are they gonna pay for lodgings? Jack says, "Don't worry about that, I got this handled. Like 3 miles down the road, I happen to know there is a giant living with 3 heads." Names are getting less detailed, heads count rising. So Jack gets cocky, he's like, "I know that there's a giant down the road, so I got this. It's kinda my thing." A giant. Yep, big one. 3 heads. He can defeat like 400 men at once, sends them flying like chaff in the wind. He's real strong. "And you think this is a good thing?" And Jack goes, "Psh, I heard this giant's an idiot. Don't even worry about it. I'll handle it myself. Just let me go ahead. You wait for me to come and tell you it's safe." And Jack rides up the road until he gets to the giant's castle, and he knocks on the door. He just straight up knocks as loud as he can. And he hears a voice call out, or 3 voices, it's got 3 heads, says, "Who's there? Who dares to knock on my door when I am a giant who can defeat 400 men and send them flying like chaff in the wind?" And Jack says, "It's me, your cousin Jack." And the giant goes, yeah, my cousin Jack. How are you, buddy?" "Not good. Things are looking rough, man. Rough specifically for you." "How could it be rough for me?" says the giant. "I have 3 heads, I can defeat 400 men, and I can send them flying like chaff in the wind." And Jack goes, "Aha, but I bring news that the valiant prince, son of King Arthur himself, is bringing an army of 1,000 men, explicitly with the intent of killing you. I have come, dear cuz, to warn you. Oh no, says the giant. He's afraid now. Thank you, good, kind cousin, for coming to warn me. What should I do? Jack tells the giant to hide in the cellar, lock himself away, and that Jack would answer the door and would claim this is his castle. And then when King Arthur leaves, he'll let the giant out. The giant says, yes, great idea. And he gives Jack the keys and he hides in the cellar and Jack locks him in. And Jack goes and gets Princey, lets him in. They have a great night. They eat the giant's feast. They stay in the giant's beds. The next morning, the prince goes ahead and Jack lets the giant out. The giant comes on out. He's half frozen and terrified. He's had a really horrible night, but he says, thank you, dear cousin Jack. What can I do to repay you? Now, Jack's not dumb. While he was staying in the giant's room the night before, he'd noticed it was real weird. Everything was pretty lush except this weird, dirty old coat and these pretty gross old slippers and a rusty sword and a flimsy looking cap. And he thought, why would he keep these awful, ugly things? And so Jack said to the giant, I will not ask you for much. That's not why I did this. I was helping you out of the goodness of my heart, but if you want to repay me, all I ask is the coat, the slippers, the hat, and the sword that I saw in your bedroom. And the giant's like, oh, I can't believe I promised to give you whatever you asked for. Fine, take them, even though they are the most valuable things that I own. Turns out, the cap is a cap of knowledge. When Jack puts it on his head, he gets any answers he needs. The slippers are slippers that let him travel anywhere he wants to go in the blink of an eye. That old coat is a coat of invisibility, of course it is. And the sword is like a vorpal blade. It goes snicker snack, lets him kill stuff in one blow. So really the DM's overpowered him at this point. This is one heck of a haul. So Jack meets back up with the prince and they go on their way and they find the lady possessed by the 7 demons. The lady possessed by the 7 devils, she is gorgeous. Even while possessed by 7 devils, she is such a looker. And the prince, he falls for her head over heels instantly. Of course he does. And so she spends the whole dinner like, hey, you're pretty handsome. He is handsome. She's genuinely noticed how handsome he is. And she's like sitting on his lap and laughing at everything he says. She's feeding him food. She's like feeding him drinks. How do you feed someone a drink? What's the drink version of feed? You know what I'm saying? And then she pulls out her handkerchief and she dabs his lips dry very sensually. And she says, I have a task for you, my lord. And he goes, anything, I'm so in. And she says, all right, well, this handkerchief, if you don't show it to me tomorrow morning when I see you, I'm gonna have you killed. You're gonna be dead. That's the deal. And then she stuffs it into her cleavage and goes to bed. And the prince is like, what the hell? I thought we were hitting it off and now she's gonna kill me. What am I meant to do with this? As always, Jack has to solve the problem. He puts on his cap that lets him know whatever he needs to know, and he's like, all right, I see what's happening here. Puts on his cloak of invisibility and follows the lady that night. In the dead of night, the lady calls on a familiar spirit to come and lead her to see Lucifer himself. And Jack, in his cloak of darkness and wearing his slippers of swiftness, it's trivial for him to show up there at the meeting place at the same time as she does. The lady greets Lucifer, pulls out the handkerchief, and bids him keep it safe. The way that he does this is by he's like, okay, and he puts it on a high shelf in hell. I'll put it up here. No one can reach it there. You got it. And Jack sneaks on up and takes the handkerchief and rushes back to give it to the prince. So the next morning when the lady says, all right, prince, show me that handkerchief, and he actually pulls it out, she's like, what the hell? But okay. And she's so disappointed that she doesn't get to kill the prince. But then throughout the day, she organizes an even more splendid feast than the night before, and she puts it together, and then during the feast, she kisses the prince sweetly on his lips. She's like, hey, lover, which is, it's very weird. You've known each other 2 days. Show me the lips that I last kissed tonight when I ask of you tomorrow morning, or else I'm gonna kill you dead. And he's like, hey, as long as you don't kiss no one else, I'm good. And she's like, no promises, okay? And he's so upset and he goes to bed sad again. And Jack's like, holy hell, she's gotta go visit Lucifer again. I gotta handle this. While the lady is calling her familiar spirit to lead her to visit Lucifer again, Jack's like pulling on his slippers of swiftness. He gets there before her and he watches. And she shows up. She says to Lucifer, what the hell, man? I told you to look after my handkerchief and you didn't. So now I'm gonna have to, in order to kill the prince's son, but like also foreshadow it, I'm gonna have to give you something that he can't steal. So she kisses Lucifer sweetly on the lips. She is so possessed. And then she goes off. She goes to bed. But Jack is still there, and Jack is invisible, and he leaps out and decapitates Lucifer and takes his head back to the prince. Don't know how he explained that one. So the next morning, the lady is like, all right, buddy boy, show me them lips, what I done kissed. And the prince pulls out the head of Lucifer by its horns, and the devils inside the lady are so freaked out that they just go on and exercise themselves, leaving the lady more radiant and beautiful than she even had been. Now she's free, and of course, she and the prince and Jack all go back to Arthur's court, and she marries the prince. Everything's all happily ever after and whatnot. And upon hearing all of Jack's exploits so far, King Arthur makes Jack the Giant Killer one of the Knights of the Round Table. They hang out here for a while, but Jack, he's a restless spirit. He's just gotta get some giant killing in. So it's not long before Jack is back on the road again looking for giants to kill. I'm weirdly glad he didn't kill that one three-headed giant. That guy didn't do anything like to him, and it would have felt indiscriminate. But no, Jack, before long, he comes across a giant on the road, sitting next to a cave on a big thing of wood. This giant is monstrous. Oh boy. His eyes were coals, like fire coals. He had like no skin on his cheeks, and then he had like a beard, but it was like it was made out of coils of like iron wire, and his hair was long enough to fall onto his shoulders, but it was all made of like writhing serpents and adders. He had this massive iron club, and he breathed so heavily that you could hear him a mile away. But Jack has like 4 super powerful artifacts. So he puts on his slippers and his coat, and while he's invisible, he shows up right next to the giant's ear and he whispers, "Hello, you're going to die tonight." Which, not even kidding, is very similar to something I have done in D&D. He goes to cut off the giant's head, crit misses, and he ends up just cutting off the dude's nose? What? And the giant starts screaming. He's swinging about, like aimlessly, because Jack's invisible. Jack is having to dodge all of these swings wildly, while this thing is howling so loud it's making the ground shake. But finally, Jack gets an opening on the giant's back and just shoves the sword in up to the hilt until the giant is dead. Cuts off the head, sends it to Arthur. Hey, look what I've done. Killed another giant, took off his nose. Definitely deliberate. But then he goes into the cave and he's searching the cave, and he finds this whole big cell full of people. And they're all like, "Oh no, are you another poor soul who's gonna be trapped with us?" And Jack's like, "Nah, son, I killed that sucker." He doesn't let the people out straight away. He's suspicious. He's like, "Wait a minute, why are you in here? Are you legitimately imprisoned?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're from like a bunch of different places. They keep us here, and they keep feeding us just so that when they want to eat us as part of a feast, the giants can come and all eat us." And so Jack lets them out, and he distributes the gold evenly amongst them as recompense for having been imprisoned by giants. So these guys all gather at a castle nearby, maybe belonging to one of them, who knows, to like celebrate their freedom and whatever. And they're having a feast when suddenly a messenger arrives. There's a hair stuck on an eyelash. A messenger arrives and says, "Jack, we got trouble. The great 2-headed giant Thundel," we're back to having names. "The great 2-headed giant Thundel has heard that you murdered his kinsman outside the cave, and he's coming to kill you, buddy." Jack's like, "Oh boy, time to go to work." Now the castle is on an island in the middle of a moat. They got a drawbridge and all, and so Jack commands that they should saw away a lot of the drawbridge until there's only like the width of 1 plank in the middle. Jack goes out and he stands in the middle, and he's wearing his cloak of invisibility, and so the giant can't see him. But when Thundel comes, he's got a great sense of smell, and he says, "Fee, fi, fo, fum." Classic. "I smell the blood of an Englishman, be he alive or be he dead. I'll grind his bones to make my bread." And then we get a nice little back and forth Smorg and Bilbo sequence where Jack's like, "Oh gee, you must be pretty nasty Miller then." The giant's like, "You killed my kinsman. Is that you? You're invisible. I can still find you. I can smell you." And Jack's like, "That's fine by me. I'm pretty confident that I can dodge you as long as you can't see me." They have this back and forth until eventually all the people are gathered at the side of the castle, and Jack takes off the cloak and he says, "Catch me first." He's still wearing his slippers, he's fine. And so he does like this this thing where he's dancing around dodging the giant as it's trying to hit him with his club. And all the people watching from the castle wall think it's so funny. They're splitting their sides laughing until finally Jack decides that that's enough. He's gone far enough. And so he runs across that single plank drawbridge and waits for the giant there. And the giant goes to get him, but he's real heavy, and one plank of wood is not enough to hold him up, so he falls into the moat, which is deep enough to cause him trouble. Jack very slowly goes about getting a rope and lassoing it around the two heads of the giant. He has a team of horses haul the giant out of the moat, and then he just beheads them with his super cool magic sword. That's the end of it. Giant's dead. Thunderdel, more like Thunder, hell of a loser. Ha! Did it. Jack hangs for a while, but again, it's not long before he gets that adventurer's itch. He's gotta go. He's gotta do something. And so he wanders out into the world. He spends a night with a pastor, I think. He keeps calling him father, but I don't think it's his literal father. He spends the night at this old man's house, and eventually the old man notices the belt with the embroidered Jack the Giant Killer thing on it. And he says, "Oh, you're the famous giant killer. Actually, we have a problem." See, this man's house is at the bottom of this hill, and he says at the top of the hill, there's a fortress where a great giant, the giant's name is Galagantua, great name for a giant. A great giant and a sorcerer have been capturing people, great knights and beautiful ladies. They've been turning them into beasts. In particular, this old man feels sorry for the daughter of the Duke, who's been turned into a beautiful white hind. He says, if only there was someone capable of like killing giants and stuff, that'd be great. That'd be a real help. But alas, you gotta deal with a giant, a sorcerer, and two fearsome griffins who stand at the gate at the entrance to the castle, tear apart anyone who tries to enter. The next morning at dawn, Jack puts on his invisibility coat and dons his slippers, and in the twinkle of an eye, he's up the top of the mountain where the griffins are waiting to destroy anyone who tries to enter. But Jack's wearing a coat of invisibility. He's fine. He gets past the griffins, no issue. He gets to the door and he finds a trumpet on a silver chain. We know how much Jack loves a trumpet, and there's a little red engraving that says, "Whoever shall this trumpet blow will cause the giant's overthrow. The black enchantment he will break, and gladness out of sadness make." Why was this trumpet lying around at the giant's castle? It's not much of a riddle. Jack picks up the bugle and he bugles. Tantivy, Tantivy, Tantivy! Ah, bugle noises. Now, hearing the bugle, the magician and the giant are freaking out. They're tearing out their hair, they're biting their thumbs. So the giant's like, "I'm not going down without a fight." He picks up his club, he goes to fight Jack. Jack pulls out his sword of strength and poof, the giant's down in one blow, because that's literally what the sword does. It's very overpowered. He turns around to do the same to the magician, but the sorcerer, he is not sticking around. He's gonna flee. He has survival instincts. He calls on a whirlwind to carry him off and into the air, and he was never seen or heard from again. But now, having killed the giant and chased off the sorcerer, the enchantment was broken, and all the lords and ladies and knights and everyone were transformed back from beasts into their rightful forms. And the Duke's daughter, who transformed from the hind back into her beauteous self, was so radiant it shone like the sun. And as soon as they left, the castle vanished. And with the death of Galagantua, there were no more giants in the land. Jack had nothing left to do anymore. He was a giant killer. So he led all the lords and ladies back to King Arthur's court, and he said, "Look, I've freed a bunch of people." And King Arthur gave him an estate that he could live in, and he married the Duke's daughter, and they lived happily ever after. Jack, he killed them giants. I hope that you enjoyed that story. I think it's a fun one. If you did, you can click the buttons. You know how YouTube works. Apart from that, I do believe that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma, and I will see you some other time. Tantivy, Tantivy, Tantivy! Bugles!